Hello there my music lovers, I'm Josh Audiophile Heaven and today we are having a look at the Arylic S50 Pro Plus. This is a streamer and they call it a preamplifier, but I would rather say that it is a streaming DAC made for computers than for other audio setups, so let's get down with the unboxing. On the back of the box we have a few of the characteristics of the S50 Pro. We have a wireless network, only BGN network, 2.4 GHz. There is an Ethernet port and it can stream up to 100 megabytes. It does have Bluetooth in aptX HD. You can also play music from a pen drive, but the experience is not the best. And that is about everything that is important from the package. Here is the unit, or rather the package of the unit. We have multi-room ESS Saber DAC. We have AirPlay, Spotify and aptX HD written on the box. This is the Arylic S50 Pro Plus. Pretty tiny for a DAC / preamplifier unit. Inside the package we can also find the remote to control the S50 Pro Plus DAC, and we also have the necessary cables, including two Wi-Fi antennas in the package. The cables include one 3.5mm to 2 RCA cable, one 2 RCA to 2 RCA cable, and the power converter for the Arylic S50 Pro Plus. So for such a tiny unit, I would say that it supports quite a lot of inputs and quite a lot of outputs. It is quite versatile. We have the antennas at the back. We also have a trigger so that it can start together with your receiver or your amplifier. I never connected the trigger before, so I cannot really say how well it works. And we have a reset button. Then we start with the inputs. We have line in, we have optical in, we have Ethernet in, and we have a USB input. As far as the outputs go, we have a subwoofer output. That is really cool if you have a system with two amplified speakers or an amplifier and the amplifier doesn't have a subwoofer output. So I really like having a separate subwoofer output. We have a coaxial output, which is basically two RCA jacks. We have a line out and we have an optical output. Now, some people have complained that it cannot output a resolution higher than Redbook flag, so it cannot really output higher than 16 bits and 44.1 kilohertz. That is the maximum it can output. But as far as the input goes, it can take in and it can actually decode high resolution files as high as 24 bits and 192 kilohertz. The S50 Pro Plus is quite light for a unit that has so many features. It has an ASS sub-red DAC inside, one of a pretty good quality actually, and the most likely configuration you are supposed to use it in is using either its Bluetooth or its Wi-Fi input and to stream music to an external DAC or amplifier. To stream music to an external DAC, you can use the optical output, which outputs a digital signal, and you can take that and input it in a DAC and DAC / amplifier for your speakers, or you can use the line out, which is a single RCA, or you can use the line out, which is two RCA jacks, the coaxial output or the optical out. Since the optical and the coaxial are pretty much interchangeable for some setups, I treat them as if they are the same thing. The sound is exactly the same between them. There is no USB output, so it cannot be used with a DAC that has USB inputs. The Ethernet port is useful only for inputting signal, and it is the same as if using it via the Wi-Fi input, and the Bluetooth has the least interesting sound, although it is not that bad since it has aptX HD supported. Now all of those sound pretty cool, right? Like it should be able to bring a bit of fun, but how about when you actually plug it in and try to use it and try to listen to it? Well, I would say this. It sounds better from its digital outputs, even though it doesn't have a very high quality ADC or analog to digital, so it will sound best if you input either Wi-Fi signal or Ethernet signal or USB, but I would really avoid it, and use it with the optical or the coaxial output. This is the best usage scenario. In this situation, it sounds quite transparent, quite decent. It is actually incredibly good to my ears. I cannot really make the difference between using it or using my computer in the back, so it is pretty good in that scenario. The next likely scenario, and this is the middle of its ability, is to use the Ethernet or Wi-Fi input and output it from the line out, which is in the style of two RCA jacks, and you can also use the sub output at the same time. But here, if you are using this kind of output, the sound already degrades a bit because the DAC inside of it is not the cleanest out there. Still, it has a pretty enjoyable level of detail, it has a pretty good overall resolution and a very fun and engaging soundstage. So it has a pretty wide kind of sound, very good instrument separation and a ton of detail. The sound isn't necessarily too smooth or too rolled off at either of the both ends. It sounds natural to my ears and there is no heavy coloration to the sounds. It sounds pretty good in that scenario. The worst scenario you can use it in is using the line in, and using the line in uses an ADC chip on the unit, which means an analog to digital converter, and that is the least interesting of its sounds. It is a feature, you can use it as a feature. For example, you are at a party and you need to connect a friend's smartphone so you can play something on the speakers. It is very good in that situation, but the actual resolution and detail of the sound is much worse compared to using the digital inputs and outputting digital or analogic signal. So the DAC inside of it is pretty decent. The DAC is actually quite good, and it doesn't really have fixed output, so you can always control the volume, which is cool too, because it is marketed as a preamplifier, so it should have volume control. That is what a preamplifier means. If you want to use it as a DAC, you can place the volume at the maximum and leave it like that, situation in which it just acts as a DAC. There is no loss in having volume control. I always say this, it is better to have volume control than to not have it when you need it. The unit is quite light, it doesn't really get that warm during usage, and most of the components don't really create a ton of heat. It sits quite nicely on the table. As you can see, I still have the plastic wrap on the feet. The feet are a bit sticky after you remove the plastic wrap, and the unit is actually quite good to use. I have not run into any single issue, although I will say this, I do not really enjoy the application made for it. So the app for Arylic is not my favorite, I'll be honest with you, and I mentioned this in other Arylic video reviews as well. The app they use is not my cup of tea really. It is a bit cumbersome and it doesn't really have bugs. For example, I haven't really run into any problems with it. It's just quite poorly optimized and quite poorly designed. It will take a while before you get used to it. You can control the unit with a smartphone as long as both of them are connected to the same Wi-Fi network, which is cool. I find that pretty cool as a feature. It can do this multi-room setup. So for example, if you have multiple of those streamers connected, you can actually have one named bathroom, one named bedroom, and one named kitchen, and you can play music on them independently. You can actually play a few music services including Spotify, Deezer, Tidal, Qobuz, TuneIn, QQ Music, Napster, Himalaya, AirPlay, and iHeartRadio. Out of those, I can only really test Tidal because the other ones are a bit strange to me. I can also test AirPlay, and AirPlay works pretty good. I can say that AirPlay is pretty fun. But yeah, with Tidal you just connect the unit, connect the account, and you play. It is pretty straightforward, and the usage is actually quite convenient of the Arylic S50 Pro Plus. At $220 it is priced competitively compared to most of the competition, and most of the competition doesn't really have as many inputs and as many outputs as the S50 Pro Plus does. I have reviewed other units from Arylic, including one very powerful amplifier for speakers in class D, and I would say this unit is better sounding than that one was. Like, the sound alone is quite good compared to most DACs that you can purchase for $220. If you were just to use it via the Ethernet input and just use it as a DAC to output line out signal, it is worth it. I would say it is worth it. There are very few DACs in this price range that are even remotely worthy of consideration. Most of them have a pretty poor sound, and the Arylic S50 Pro Plus has a pretty satisfying sound. It is quite detailed, it has a natural soundstage, natural overall presentation, and it is fairly refined for the price. Like, you are paying $220 at this price point. There is very little stuff available. Most of the stuff is either integrated sound cards that come from the motherboard or just dongles. You could get a dongle instead, but no dongle on the market has this number of inputs and of outputs and is this convenient to use. With this unit, you just configure it, you connect it to your Wi-Fi, and you leave it. It doesn't really require any kind of maintenance, and it should be good to go. I hope that it is as good to go as my video has been. I hope that today's video has been enjoyable to watch. I hope you will consider subscribing to Audiophile Heaven. So leave a like on this video if you enjoyed the content. I hope that you have the loveliest of weeks in there. I hope you have lots of fun, and I hope that this video is helpful to you. Don't forget to check out my other videos if you are interested in other products, and also don't forget that you are the star for being here with me today. Bye!